Welcome, everyone. It is time for another episode of It's Time We Talk, and this is a very special episode. Thomas Tuchel has just released his 26-man squad that will be going to the United States for the World Cup. And even before it was released, there was a lot of opinions flying, a lot of news flying around the internet yesterday about who's in, who's out. Here to dissect it all with me and to talk about the squad is my good friend Theo Hewson-Betts. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, anytime, man. Look, this is a big topic, exciting time for the world, really, every footballing nation, and there's a lot to talk about with this squad list. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to do I plan on doing something similar, maybe when the U.S. team comes out. But I feel like when the England team comes out, it's always a big occasion. It's always, I don't want to say always controversial, but there's always talking points about it. And I feel like it's the squad announcement that so many people pay attention to. And I think, especially this year, under a new manager, under a new sort of direction, it was going to be very interesting to see where he went and what he decided to do. There were a lot of people in the past who said that Gareth Southgate played favorites and it didn't matter the form that they were in, it didn't matter anything else. He picked the guys that he liked. So it seems like with this, there of course is going to be favoritism showed no matter what, but it definitely seems like this is definitely not a Southgate squad.
No,
You can tell.
no, distinctly not. It's drastically different. And actually, it is an interesting moment for England fans, really. At the end of Southgate's tenure, there were a lot of people calling for him to go out, as you say, because he had a lot of favourites, and they wanted someone who has won before, is a serial winner, can do it in a tournament setting, which we saw in his brief stint at Chelsea as well, and Tuchel came out in his press conference today after the squad was announced and said it's not my job to pick the most talented players, and that is a really interesting theme of this. Southgate would very much pick the players he thought was best, tried to put them in positions where he thought they could affect the game, and Tuchel seems to have taken a bit of a different approach. So there's been mixed reaction here in England, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start off by saying I think that personally, and I'm not a fan, so I might not be coming from the best place here, but I think it is very difficult for Thomas Tuchel to put out a squad that isn't capable of winning the entire thing, just because of how much talent England have and how good they've been in the past and how good their players are both in the Premier League and abroad.
Yeah, well, exactly. We're in a fortunate position in that we do have, our players are reared really in the best league, the richest league, I'll say, in world football, and that gives them a really good basis during their footballing education to become the brilliant players that we know they are. The difference sort of between this squad and previous squads is we have a lot of younger players who maybe aren't as big a name as in previous years, in previous tournaments. Maybe they're not always playing for the biggest club. Maybe they've got a bit less experience on the international stage. And so there is a lot of talent there, but it's maybe a bit less predictable how we'll do. Players that I'm sure we'll get into, players like Harry Maguire who've been there, done that, and had good seasons, haven't made it in. And instead you've got players like Jarell Quansah of Bayer Leverkusen making their way into the squad, who is maybe a bit of an unknown even to England fans since he's moved over to Germany. So it'll be very interesting to see how those less experienced, less sort of been there, done that Southgate players will fare at a major tournament like this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I say let's just get straight into dissecting the squad. So I think goalkeeper is probably the least controversial, if any. I mean, originally like I said, I made a potential squad in November of what I thought the squad should be at the time, and I had Nick Pope in there. But now I think even though Trafford has not been starting keeper for Manchester City, I still think, from the minutes that he has gotten from the games that he has started, I think of the Carabao Cup final, I think of the FA Cup final, he's proved that he's worthy of this spot, and it's a third goalkeeper. I mean, I don't see him playing any minutes of any kind at this tournament, but I still think, those three are the exact three that I had in my World Cup squad that I made. I don't think that's controversial at all.
No, no, not at all. Nick Pope's had a more difficult season this year. It does seem as though he's going to be sort of moving on his way out of Newcastle. There's a lot of suggestion that they'll be looking for a new goalkeeper this season. He's had a stunning career, and when he's made its previous tournament squads, it's felt pretty clear that he was the backup to Pickford and was sort of there to push him along. He's a brilliant goalkeeper, but with him sort of reaching this sort of twilight and potentially, taking a step down in terms of the club that he'll be playing for, having Dean Henderson in, who's had a brilliant year for Crystal Palace, makes sense as the backup. And then you want to give experience of a major tournament to your young players. And James Trafford, being in a position where, as you say, he won't play, it'll just be a really good position for him to come along, experience what a tournament is like, because there's every chance that when Pickford does step down from England duty, which, we've still got a couple of years from, he's still playing at a very, very high level, there's a very good chance that he'll be the replacement given his quality that he showed at Burnley last year and at Man City this season.
100%. Going into defenders is where we already see a lot of people had a lot of issues with the defenders that he picked. Of course, Dan Burn, Gahey, Reece James, Konsa, Livramento, Nico O'Reilly, Gerald Kwanzaa, Jed Spence, and John Stones. In comparison to the squad that I picked, I did not have Dan Burn. I did not have Kwanzaa. I did not have Spence, and I did not have Stones. In my personal ones, I picked Colwill, Lewis Hall, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and Harry Maguire.
Yep.
Those were the differences that I made. And I think, I don't mind. I know a lot of people had an issue with Dan Burn going over someone like Lewis Hall, or if you're classifying him as a center back, going over Harry Maguire. And I can't really argue with that. The Dan Burn inclusion makes sense because he's picked him for a few squads beforehand, but, I understand that that's, a guy who can play left back, can play center back, and I saw somebody on Twitter yesterday actually make a pretty decent point for bringing him, and that's, a lot of the teams that England will be playing, especially in the beginning of the tournament, in the group stage and in the beginning of the knockouts. No knock to Croatia, but they're not the top 10 teams in the world.
Yeah.
So when you bring someone like Harry Maguire, I assume Harry Maguire probably wouldn't have started. I assume that, and we'll get on to what the starting 11 could be, but I assume that that Tuchel didn't have him in his starting lineup. So bringing someone who's so determined on starting and is a leader, and it's probably better to pick someone who's better coming off the bench and that you can rely on. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He picked a lot of guys who aren't going to demand to start and aren't going to be upset with that, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. One of the criticisms that's been levied at Tuchel across his career, really, is his propensity for falling out with players and with sort of higher management at clubs. And I do think that you're right. This is a very good point. I think maybe instead of opening himself up to challenge, bringing players like Maguire or Foden or Palmer who would have this real desire to start and make a difference, and then you'd also have the press saying, "Why aren't you throwing him on? What's going on? England are missing a spark. Throw this player on." He sort of removed that media frenzy by just not bringing those players. And Harry Maguire will have every right to be annoyed by this. He's been called up to England squads after much, much, much worse seasons than he's had this year at Manchester United, where he has been their best centre-back in a team that has shown massive potential throughout the year, but particularly under Michael Carrick. So he will be rightfully frustrated and annoyed to have not made this squad. But, Dan Burn, it's, first of all, what a fairy tale story this is. He found his way to his boyhood club at a late age for a footballer, has been startlingly good, has scored winners in massive games for them, and is, a really, really reliable player who can play across two positions, and importantly is left-footed in a squad which doesn't have many left-footers at all. I believe he's one of not very few natural left footers in the entire team, and will
Yeah.
be likely one of the two first choices for the left back position, along with Nico O'Reilly. So you'd imagine it'd be Nico O'Reilly in games where we're going to have more possession, more potential to sort of bully
Yeah.
teams and force them back. And in games where we're going to be playing against teams who have maybe more aggressive attacking lineups, who are going to be pushing us, who maybe we don't want to commit as much to, you throw Dan Burn in at left back, you know that he can defend excellently, you know he can go forward as well with decent levels of attacking output.
Yeah.
And he's also a massive threat from set pieces, which is
Of course.
an underrated and very, very important part of tournament football, which is, sometimes these games are so tight because there's so much on the line, so you just need to be able to, firstly, knock one in from a corner, and secondly, most importantly, be able to defend your own box. And Dan Burn will be very good at that. As for the other surprises that you said, John Stones is England's best ball-playing centre-back by a distance. He's had an injury-hit year, and maybe doesn't have the turn of pace that he used to, even though he was never a particularly quick centre-back. But what he does do is bring tournament experience, brings a real ability to play it out and keep hold of the ball. And I don't think many people will be massively surprised to have seen him come in. Jed Spence has been a surprising choice. He's been playing pretty well for a struggling Tottenham team over the last 2 years, and is clearly willing to, fight for his place. He's willing to go forward, can play on the left, can play on the right, so brings a bit of a range. But I expect Spence, like you say, will be more of a sub if we're really struggling in a game where we want to bring on another attacking fullback, perhaps for Nico O'Reilly or perhaps for Reece James, who most people in the country will expect to start at right back. So there are names in there that are a surprise. In terms of exclusions as well, he's not been a very popular player for England over the last couple of years, but Trent Alexander-Arnold not making it in again is a big surprise. It's not really a shock given Tuchel's clearly not been that much of a fan of him. But if you have Real Madrid starting right back who is capable of doing things that not many other players are capable of doing with the ball, you'd think that tournament football, even if you bring him on for the last 10 minutes just to get some good balls into the box, play him in that sort of quarterback role, push him back towards the halfway line and let him ping balls in towards the back post. Two players like Dan Burn if you're down a goal. It is slightly surprising that he hasn't been chosen just even for that role, really. But
yeah, it definitely seems like, well, Trent in previous tournaments, I know at the Euros and at the last World Cup, was sort of brought on by Southgate not only as a right back, but when brought in also as somebody to partner Declan Rice in midfield. And while it's one of those things that we mentioned before where Southgate would bring the best possible team and sort of try to shoehorn them in wherever he could. And I guess there is some merit to doing that, but if you have someone like Trent, who as I mentioned before, he's going to be someone who is a big personality, who's going to want to start, who's going to want to see some valuable minutes. And right now, I think it's clear that Reece James is the better player at right back, and I don't think Trent is better in the midfield than someone like Elliot Anderson or, even Kobe Mainu. I just think those guys are more natural, talented center midfielders than him to partner Declan Rice. So it's kind of a situation. I feel like we're gonna mention that as we go on. Of having this awkward situation where I have no doubt that Tuchel wanted to bring a bunch of these guys, but it's just about bringing the best cohesive squad and not just bringing the best players with an English passport.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving into midfield, I think that's a pretty good segue to move into there. I feel like looking at it, nothing really surprises me. There are some people, like I said, when I picked my squad, it was just who I would have brought. It's not trying to predict what he would have done. I had some honorable mentions I had were Morgan Gibbs-White, Adam Wharton, James Garner. Out of the midfielders that were picked, that's who I picked. Jordan Henderson, I get it. I'm not huge on that pick, but I understand that his name holds a lot of weight in the England camp, and Southgate loved him. Tuchel obviously is fond of him, and I mean he's had a decent season for Brentford. I can't ignore that either. So it doesn't shock me, but I mean I guess I can't really complain about that. The rest of them, I mean I've Elliot Anderson has had a really nice season for Forest. You know, he's linked with a big move in the summer to one of the Manchester clubs, so that makes a lot of sense. Jude Bellingham, I know that there's been some, I don't want to say tension, but you know, there's been some about if Tuchel was going to start Bellingham, and we have yet to see that, but I still think, you know, you have to bring someone like him. As an Arsenal fan, I'm really happy to see in there, but he wasn't in my original squad, so I think that's pretty interesting. But I still think that he's very much deserving. And like I said, Mainu, Rice, Rogers, I mean, you got to bring those guys. Those guys were fantastic this season. I think that they are such. They're guys that even if you don't start them, I mean, you're gonna start Rice. If you don't start Mainu or Rogers, they bring a real force off the bench for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think, look, the midfield is probably the most settled, I would say, in a lot of England's fans' minds, the most settled unit. So you will have Rice starting next to Elliot Anderson, and most likely it will be Jude Bellingham in the number 10 ahead of them. And that has been a fairly consistent thread throughout Tuchel's time in charge of England. Obviously, Bellingham has missed a few squads here and there, has been injured, hasn't been as consistent. If he's not starting, I would say there's a good chance that you'll be looking at one of Rogers or Eze coming in. There are also both options off the left-hand side, which is a position that England maybe don't have a clear-cut starter in. But those three players, Anderson, Rice and Bellingham, are all game changers in their own right. Rice is a brilliant defender. His recovery pace is second to none. He brings so much security, so much solidity. Rightfully a nominee for Player of the Year this year in the Premier League after Arsenal's win, which congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And Elliot Anderson, you know, one of the moves that has baffled me most in recent years was Newcastle letting him go to Forest when they did.
Yeah.
It was clear how good of a player he was. They clearly decided Lewis Miley was the better prospect, which, you know, is yet to be decided. I won't pass any judgment on that.
We'll see, I suppose.
But if they'd given Anderson the starts over the last couple of years that he's had at Forest, they could be the ones looking at £100 million player.
Yeah.
Either to keep or to sell and pocket the money. So I think that all makes sense. The rest of the players are game changers, really. You know, Mainu can come on in number 10. He's maybe not very good defensively. It's his defensive awareness maybe lets him down sometimes, but if you put him next to Rice as well, you've got that backup, you've got that support behind him. Rogers, Eze, you can bring those on. They can have a massive impact on the game. And as you said, Jordan Henderson is there because he is sort of the man that this squad is built around. He may very well not feature very much. I think it's likely that maybe in the third group stage game, if we're already qualified, that's when you'll see him get a start. In games where we're winning 1-0 in the 80th minute, that's maybe where you'll see him come on next to Rice just to offer a bit of extra solidity. He has had a very good season for Brentford this year. Has been there, has done it, is reliable, is a great character to have around. So I think as the build up to the World Cup has come sort of to its apex now, the England fans who have been annoyed about Henderson being called up has dwindled, really, as it's become clearer that he will be a part of this squad and what his role is going to be.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, looking in midfield, it depends whether you call them forwards or midfielders.
Yeah.
You could obviously make a claim about Palmer and Foden, and so we can go into that now if that's okay, rather than go into them on the forwards, just seeing as they've been mentioned.
Yeah.
I think those are two players who, particularly if you're not watching the Premier League every week, you will be surprised that haven't made it in. I think Pep Guardiola will be annoyed at himself, perhaps, for not giving Foden the time this year to really flourish and play. In the last couple of weeks, he's had better performances, has made a difference in games. But Pep does this. You know, he rotates the team. He decides on each given season who his starters are going to be. Foden hasn't made it in, so on form, there's every right not to call him up for this. And Palmer has had a poorer sort of 12 months, really, since Christmas time under Maresca
Yeah.
last season, his output has dwindled. I think it's clear that he's a brilliant finisher, and in difficult situations is really composed and really able to put all the pressure out of his mind and perform really well, but hasn't created the chances that maybe he would want to. I think he's suffered from Nicholas Jackson moving over to Bayern Munich, maybe not having the
Yeah.
player make runs in behind. And with the likely lineup that England are going to play, you're not going to have that similar player who does make those runs in behind. You're going to have players dropping in. So if you're bringing in two number 10s who are going to be also looking to possess the ball and try and find little passes, I think it can be
Yeah.
difficult to find a way to spread the play out. And I think what Tuchel's done is said, okay, well, what we need then is we need midfielders who are more likely to drive with it or be able to sit back and ping passes around rather than
Yeah.
midfielders who are going to be looking to possess the ball, because really we want the ball at the feet of Saka, at the feet of Kane, and
Yeah.
whoever is going to play on the left, who my early tip would be one of Eze or Rodgers, I think.
Yeah. I think also with, Palmer, I just think he's been playing the season injured. He's back and he's playing regularly for Chelsea, but it's still it's crazy to see how well he did in the 23-24 season and how well he started 24-25, and just to see it's obvious that he's just nursing something, and maybe that's a reason why I said in my write-up of my squad, I said I think honestly the best possible thing for Palmer is to not get called up and to just have a summer. Well, obviously he's not going to want a summer to rest. He wants to be in the U.S. He wants to be playing, but I think for Chelsea fans the best possible thing is for him to take this summer to rest and recover.
Yeah.
It's obvious that I think he maybe wasn't rushed back, but maybe wasn't brought all the way back to 100%. So that I think has a lot to do with some of the underwhelming performances we've seen from him. Foden, like you said, it's not really an injury thing. It's more of a Pep just hasn't really felt like he needed to use him all that much. And I mean, in a lot of cases, it's it seems like Tuchel is very much "What have you done for me lately?" in some situations. So I do get Foden being excluded. He wasn't in my team, and like I said, from the ones that I ended in, I would have loved to see James Garner. I think he has been an unsung hero for Everton. He has really been playing very, very well, and it's the same with Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace, another guy who I think, can feel a little bit hard done by. Like I said, I understand the midfield selections. It makes sense to me, especially with what Tuchel has done in his short tenure as England manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also added in Morgan Gibbs-White because I think, at the very least, he deserves at least a mention. But I'm not really. Even if I was an England fan, I probably wouldn't be too upset with the midfielders that he's picked.
No, agreed. Yeah, with Gibbs-White, his performances this year deserve a call-up, but it's sort of the battle of the Morgans. It's him or Rodgers, and that is a 50-50 coin flip. Eze's in that conversation as well. Tuchel's clearly picked the two players that he feels he can rely on more, which Gibbs-White will feel disappointed by, particularly after a strong season, but Rodgers has had a good season. Eze's been a game changer at times for Arsenal as well, so that makes sense. And as for Wharton and Garner, I completely agree. They're players who deserve a call-up on the basis of their performances, but I think with that midfield three being so settled, he didn't necessarily feel the need, perhaps, for bringing in Adam Wharton because he knows that Anderson's ahead of him in the pecking order. Mm-hmm. He perhaps didn't feel the need for bringing in Garner because he knows that Henderson and Rice are ahead of him in the pecking order, and so instead of bringing two midfielders who are likely maybe to not feature that much, I think he's made the decision to bring in players who he can rely on off the bench to make a difference in a bit of an attacking sense. So that's Mainu, that's Rodgers, that's Eze as well potentially. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think with Gibbs-White, it's very much a battle of the Morgans. Him or Rodgers, who can you rely on more? Tuchel clearly feels like he can rely on Rodgers more. Gibbs-White has every right to feel a bit frustrated with that, particularly given how strong he's been this season. But that's sort of the way of the world. Tuchel's picked the players he thinks he can rely on more. And yeah, Wharton and Garner. I think Garner had a chance of making it in. I think, weirdly, it was probably a choice between him and Jarell Quansah as sort of this backup right back / other position, because Garner's played there quite a lot this year.
Mm-hmm.
Quansah's beat him out. Means that he can play at centre back as well. Garner was never going to get in over Rice, likely not over Henderson either. And so, in the midfield positions, Tuchel's picked players who can come off the bench and make a difference, and that is Mainu, Rodgers, and likely Eberiche Eze, depending on whether he starts on the left or not.
Yeah. All right, and with that, we've got our forwards. So of course he's decided to take Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Noni Madueke, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Ivan Toney, and Ollie Watkins. I know you and I had a discussion yesterday about the omission. We were talking about the omission of. Now I can't remember who we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about potentially will Ollie Watkins make the squad because Ivan Toney had made it. So we were talking about is he going to bring them both? Yeah. And I was saying, if not, just for his performance against the Netherlands at the Euros, I think that, I think he should probably get the call up just based on that. But I think after a horrid start to the season for Villa and for him, and it was really, really funny. I don't know if you saw the parade where he was like, where they're talking about, after we lost 5 games in a row, and I think it was Rodgers or someone who came up to him and was like, with no goals, and he's like, yeah, no goals because of me, and he had such a great middle and end to the season too. I think he's very much worthy of that call up. I think Kane, Saka, Rashford, Watkins, those are the guys that I saw. I think can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
But then, I think if you're someone like Phil Foden or Cole Palmer, especially if you're a Man City or a Chelsea fan and you see Noni Madueke in there, I mean, I love Madueke, and I was one of the few Arsenal fans that actually was excited by the signing, just because I think he brings a sort of swagger about him, and he's just, he's such an exciting player on and off the ball. But I mean, he's obviously been sort of a deputy to Bukayo Saka, and he has filled in nicely when Saka was injured, but I didn't think he had a real good end product this season, and so I don't blame people for having an issue with Madueke's inclusion, because I understand it. I like that he's in, and I appreciate what he's done for Arsenal in their title-winning season, but I get that. And then Toney, I mean, that was definitely a surprise to me.
Yeah, well, Toney has played a grand total of 2 minutes under Thomas Tuchel in the time that he's been in charge of England. I think that'll be the surprise to most people, that he's made it in over. I think, obviously I have my biases here, I am a Leeds fan, but I think if you were looking at the England striker who is in better form, you'll be looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's managed to score, has hit double figures, is nearly at his best scoring season in the Premier League, and has performed really well in terms of build-up, in terms of linking play, and while his finishing can sometimes leave something to be desired, I think he's a really consistent, hard-battling, fighting centre-forward. Toney screams to me a penalty call-up.
Yeah, I was going to mention that,
Yeah, he's a brilliant penalty taker, and the likelihood of him getting on the pitch with more than 5 minutes left to play, I would say, is really limited. And I imagine that Tuchel will have been clear with him that that's the intention. We saw at Brentford, he is a good player. He can do this. Going to Saudi has perhaps taken him out of the minds of a lot of English fans. But he is a good player. He has performed well at the Premier League level before. So it's not like you're bringing in someone who's completely clueless or completely incompetent.
Yeah.
I would imagine Ollie Watkins will be the backup to Kane, and Watkins brings something different as well. He's more of a running in behind, getting on the last line of defenders and trying to sort of push them back rather than Kane sort of dropping in. And that makes sense as well, bringing in a different option, and one who, as you said, can do it at the top level. We've seen for Villa this season, and we've seen in previous tournaments too. So I think that makes sense. Yeah, the Tony one will upset people, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
But
he's someone also. I'll just didn't
go for
mean
it now.
to interrupt. I looked it up. I didn't real so a lot of guys go to the Saudi league and they treat it as a vacation. And,
Mm-hmm.
this is not me trying to justify Tony's inclusion by saying this, but I just thought this was interesting. But a lot of people treat it like a vacation. We've seen guys go to the Saudi league and completely fall off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Second top scorer
Yeah.
in the Saudi
Well,
league. Like he's taking it seriously over there. He obviously still wants to be in the good books of someone like Tuchel. So
yeah.
I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, I think he'll be harbouring hopes that this could be his step back towards sort of Premier League football and European football as well. I'm sure he'll be happy with the paycheck that he's earning over there, and the quality of football has increased as well. But
Yeah,
he's someone who would have been harbouring hopes of a move to a Big Six club here in England before his punishment for gambling, which obviously curtailed his career.
Yeah.
Brentford managed to handle life without him very well with Mbumo and Wissa. So, he'll be seeing this tournament as an opportunity, perhaps, to get his name back in the minds of Premier League clubs who maybe are looking for a reliable number 9.
Yeah.
On Noni Madueke, I think it's maybe the most interesting inclusion in the team. I think Tuchel has done something which you don't see managers do very often at international level, which is he's brought in a player who is used as a super sub to fill exactly the same role for England. So
yeah,
is there a benefit to that? This is something that maybe hasn't been explored that much. If a player is used to playing half an hour and coming on and trying to make a difference, there's a very good chance that they'll be better at understanding their role and the dynamic of a super sub, more so than bringing on Foden or bringing on Palmer, who are used to starting games from the beginning and sort of grinding teams down. So Madueke will be able to come on as a Saka replacement in the same way that Arsenal have used him this year, operate in a similar way, being a left footer on the right hand side, who can use his fresher legs to attack fullbacks and perhaps make a difference in exactly the same way that Arsenal have used him. So I think there's an interesting strain of logic there that could really work in our favour. But I also think it reveals something about the position that I think is the least settled in the entire England squad, which is the left wing position. In this team, you've got Anthony Gordon, Noni Madueke, Marcus Rashford, perhaps Ollie Watkins, Eberechi Eze, and Morgan Rogers, all of whom are capable of playing in that left wing position. And I think that is the one that a lot of people are most intrigued by. Anthony Gordon hasn't had his best season for Newcastle, not by a long stretch, but brings bundles of energy, likes running in behind, likes pushing teams backwards. Eze has played on the left a number of times for Arsenal this year, has had pretty good results in some games, less good results in others, but is capable of dropping a bit deeper, picking up the ball, trying to pick a pass. Rodgers is sort of a mix of the two, is capable of doing both of those things, likes dropping deep to receive the ball and trying to take a man on, but also loves a little run in behind, getting on the end of chances. And Madueke is sort of this, when he played there at times for Arsenal this season, but mainly for Chelsea when he was there, he has been capable of bringing the ball in, getting down to the byline and whipping a cross in. And that is something that maybe we don't see as much. Maybe defences won't be quite as prepared for as they would be, wingers taking a touch, turning back into the game and trying to either get a shot or find a pass. So I think he's brought a range of options for the left wing position because he's not quite sure who the most likely starter will be there. And frankly, I think that's going to be the most interesting position in the tournament. That is, usually that position in previous years would have just been Raheem Sterling's. He's obviously had a tough couple of years for one reason or another, and England are yet to properly replace him. So that would be the position where I think if England are going to struggle to create chances, to produce, it's going to be down that left-hand side, and that could very well be the thing that prevents them from going as far in this tournament as many England fans and potentially foreign fans would have thought they might go. Because if they're very reliant on Saka and very reliant on Kane to create and finish chances, they need someone on the left-hand side who can distract attention from those two players, and so they need someone who is capable of big moments, and there's a strong argument that Marcus Rashford is the player with that sort of X factor who can come in. He's had a pretty decent year for Barcelona. It's not clear yet whether they're going to sign him, but what he has shown time and time again is that he's capable of moments of magic, even if not on the most consistent basis. So if you can put Rashford out there, who you know can take a man on, can be difficult, can get on the end of chances as well, maybe that's the sort of player that you want, because you know that he'll attract attention from defenders and might create a bit of extra space for Harry Kane or Bukayo Saka, who are likely to start in the striker and right wing positions.
Yeah, definitely. Just to close us off, I'm gonna go over. I think we can go over just real quickly what we think the starting 11 for the first game against Croatia. It's gonna be interesting because you're facing the best team in the group first off, which usually that doesn't happen very much, but it'll be an interesting test straight away. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think the starting lineup picks itself, but I understand that, there are some things that you can chop and change. So obviously Pickford goes in goal. I think, a partnership of... I would have originally thought that the partnership at the back would have been Guehi and Maguire, but now knowing that Maguire is not going and that he wasn't going to start anyway, I'm pretty confident that it'll be probably Guehi and Stones. Or, maybe Guehi and Konsa. I'm not really sure. I think you could either one there. A midfield three of Anderson, Rice, and Bellingham. And then the front three I would go for Rashford on the left, Kane through the middle, and Saka on the right.
Yeah, and what were your fullbacks, sorry?
Oh, I didn't even say my fullbacks. Reece James on the right, Nico O'Reilly on the left.
Yeah, I think my team's very similar to that. I think with Croatia, they are a good team and a tough team to beat, but don't quite perhaps have the pace that a lot of other teams will have, and we definitely have the better players. So the opportunity, I think, is there to try things in that first game to maybe set a precedent for the tournament. You've got Dan Burn behind Nico O'Reilly, so you start Nico O'Reilly in this first game. See how he does in a tournament setting with all this pressure on his back in an England shirt, and see how he can link up with whoever plays in left wing, which I'll get to in a second. So I would agree Pickford in net. For this game, definitely Reece James at right back. I think that's the player that picks himself. If he can stay fit throughout the tournament, that's brilliant. If not, Tino Livramento is a good option behind him. Then I would also be looking at Guehi and Stones at the back. I think Guehi is a brilliantly dominating defender. He's really cultured on the ball as well. Very, very good at picking a pass. But he's willing to engage high up the pitch, has the recovery pace to get back and sort of chase down attacks as well, which he won't have partner next to him in John Stones, but who is really capable of finding the pass that can cut a team to shreds. And then, Nico O'Reilly on the left offers height as well, again, if we're talking about corners. A really good ability to go forward and link play and perhaps drop into midfield too, which you can do on the other side too with Reece James. So you have this nice sort of switching of right back and left back into midfield while the other one slots into defence. So I think that works well as a back line. I agree, I would go with Anderson, Rice and Bellingham in midfield. They feel like the obvious choices. Bellingham is so capable of scoring a goal which changes a game that I think it would be foolish to leave him out of the starting 11. Give
Who
him
was
a chance.
it in the Euros that he scored the bicycle kick against? I'm forgetting.
I'm totally not going to remember that.
Was it I think it was Serbia.
Very possibly Serbia, yes. He is capable of those game-changing moments, and even though he's not had his best year for Madrid, I think it would be a risk to leave him out because we know how capable he is of scoring a goal that can be all-important. And I think if you want to see him at his best in this tournament, you start him from the first game and give him a chance to work his way into form. Striker is obviously Harry Kane. Right wing is obviously Bukayo Saka. And I think for the first game, it will be one of Eze or Rashford. I would be tempted to say it'll be Eze for the game against Croatia because I think he'll want to control possession a bit more. Rashford is more capable of just losing it by trying to skill too many. Eze is still capable of finding that pass and linking play together really well. But then when we get to the games, perhaps where it's more likely to be counter-attacking, teams like Ghana is a good example of this. A team that are really, really good on the counter attack. So we're likely to be the game is
Yep.
more likely to be a bit like a basketball match going back and forth. So you want someone with a bit more pace who wants to run in behind, can get on the end of long passes by Stones. But in the games where we're holding possession, I think Eze would be my choice on the left hand side. And then if he's still struggling 60 minutes, that's when you turn to the three subs that I think will see the most often coming on for England when they're looking for a game changer. And that'll be Marcus Rashford coming on the left. I think you'll see Kobbie Mainoo coming on potentially for Bellingham, potentially for Anderson with Bellingham moving back. And then the other one is Ollie Watkins, but I personally would always leave Kane on the pitch for longer than people do, just because I think he's one of the best finishers in the world, and definitely one of the best strikers, potentially in world history, which might be a hot take, but I think his scoring and assist record speaks for itself. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see how we perform. I think Tuchel has a lot of pressure on him. This has been a very controversial squad selection with a lot of players who people would have expected to make it in, not making it. And if England are lacking that spark, are lacking, attacking cohesiveness, there'll be a lot of questions asked of him. So he needs England to perform well here, and he needs to be the manager really to take that title of nearly men away from us and turn us into winners. And there's one way to do that, and I'm afraid that is beating potentially much better, much more experienced with this squad teams on the way through to the final. So we'll see how things go, but hey, it's going to be a good tournament one way or another.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We're less than 3 weeks away from Mexico, South Africa. That's going to be incredible. It was Slovakia, by the way. I looked it up in the interim that he scored it against.
Of course it was.
Which,
I knew it was Eastern European.
Yeah. But no, Theo, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I feel like, this is a big tournament for England. This is a big tournament for so many teams, and this is such a big call. And even though Tuchel does have that new extension that takes him to, I think, the next Euros, I want to say, this still is a big thing for him. And if, God forbid, they massively underperform, his job could very much be at risk. So he's got a lot to prove in this in this tournament. So it'll be interesting to see. I doubt this is the last time that you and I will be speaking about the World Cup. So we'll try to figure out another way to get us talking again about the tournament, because it's going to be so long and it's going to be so big, and I'm very, very much excited for it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, anytime, mate. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.